welcome everyone this evening. Thank you for joining us. Before we start, I'd like to just ask everyone to have their cameras and mics turned off throughout. If you do have any questions for Gina, please write your questions in the chat function, and we're going to have 10 to 15 minutes at the end for us to address the questions, and I'll ask as many as I can to Gina within our time frame. So welcome, thank you for coming. Looks like we have a really lovely audience this evening. So this evening we are delighted to welcome artist Gina Medcalf. Gina lives and works in South London with her husband, the sculptor Charles Hewlings. Gina is an abstract painter in which colour is absolutely central to her work and research. Gina studied at the Central School of Art and then went on to immerse herself in the New York art scene in the late 70s. Alongside Gina's art practice, she taught at Kingston University and the University of the Arts, London, Chelsea. Gina's painting has won her several awards, including the Pollock Krasner Foundation Award and the Abbey Fellowship painting at the British School of Rome. Gina has continually shown in a multitude of exhibitions and galleries over the years, including the Serpentine and also the exhibition put on by Flowers East in 2001, entitled A Survey of British Abstract Painting. So welcome, Gina. I would like to go right back to the beginning of your painting career, and I'd like you to just set the scene and tell us a little bit about your early influences and what was happening at this time.
I've started 50 years ago and I'm looking back at these paintings now. They look, I don't know, they don't look so far away, but don't feel so far away. I feel very much as if my voice is in them. And I'm very glad to see them again. This painting, I haven't a clue where it is, somewhere in California, and maybe in a dustbin for all I know. It is 8 feet by 4 feet, and the next two paintings were shown at the Serpentine in wonderful exhibitions, annual exhibitions the Serpentine had, which with 4 artists each year, and an artist choosing those 4 artists. So this was in 1973. I think there was a sculpture one as well. So this was Serpentine Painting 1973. And they were big rooms at the Serpentine then, very, very beautiful. The old tea room that had been made into galleries. Mm-hmm. Very, very nice space. And it was summer and it was, it was terrific. Of course, I knew I was going to show there. So this vertical double square of 8 feet by 4, I thought felt good in the space. And there were probably maybe 8 of them in the space. So this remains a very important painting to me, actually, because it connects very much with later paintings, completely unconsciously. So perhaps you'll see that as we move on. The next slide, please. Okay, great. This was another of these paintings. We're slightly missing the bottom of it, but and they were made in 1972. Can I go back to that pink painting? Thank you. I have just after 40 years of this being in a collection in New York, got it back. It came bobbing on the sea in a fantastic crate. Its owner unfortunately died, but she looked after it with great care for 40 years. And it was in an apartment on the Upper West Side of Manhattan in a great space. It looked terrific. So, but I'm very glad to see it again, and it seems in good condition. It's odd, to have the past, and very nice. It's very rare to be able to keep paintings, and thank goodness for some collectors who do look after them. And
did you create this one in New York? when you?
No, I made it in London before the Serpentine show.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah. And then I took it to America with me.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Next slide, please. This is just, I put this in out of interest because this is at the show, and it's such a nice photo of young people looking at paintings. Then doesn't look so different to today, really, but it was a very nice experience. The show was chosen by Paul Huxley, and there were two people who I liked their paintings very much in the show. One was Michael Ginsburg, the other was Dick James, who's actually a Norwich artist.
Mm.
They were in their own rooms, and it was I liked the show.
What were the ideas that you were exploring in your painting at this time? I know you were talking about, I think this comes with the next image, you were talking to me about equal balance and equal prominence of colour and shape in your painting.
Well, Kasia, that comes a bit later. I think I'm more conscious. It's 50 years ago, so my memory is not that good of exactly how these were put together. They came, of course, out of work that I'd done at art school. I have always made abstract paintings since I began at art school. And it has always, abstraction always seemed the most real thing to me, is the thing that I keep coming back to, this real. It feels real. The feelings of it are real. It's not a depiction of something else. I think you're maybe born to depict or not,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not. So how did this come about? Well, the double square was important to have decided on this sort of ground plan. Apart from that, I wanted not to know what the painting was going to end up looking like.
Mm-hmm.
It was very important to me to go in there armed to a certain extent by mixed up buckets of paint or whatever, but I did not know what the painting was going to look like in the end. And it was, edgy, and I liked that at the time.
Would you say that the painting got to a point where it kind of found itself? Were you trying to kind of uncover what it was when you were doing it? Is that?
That sounds a bit sensible, if you don't mind me saying. It was wilder than that. I can only say. There was, I think, the fact of the show was very concentrating to the mind. And so there wasn't a great deal of failure. I do have a lot of sort of failed paintings, either technically or the drawings sort of weak or something. But this group seemed to just they came together quite well.
Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you. Should we move on to the next slide?
Yes. Okay, this was made in New York, and I was in New York for maybe 11 years, and I had a loft, which sometimes I had to share because it was expensive. I had a full-time job to start with, 5 days a week. I used to get up at 5 and make a bit of work, but in the end, New York is just, there are like 40 people lined up behind you for your job or for your application or for anything. And you had to get used to it, and in a way it was a case of surviving it. It was very exciting. Mm-hmm. And artists were much more open than in London, I found. much more available. You could call up. Manhattan's quite small, so you could go to 3 studios in an afternoon, and great conversations. Just people were very open and passionate about what they were making. And I don't know, in the moment, it was very, very exciting. Yeah.
What were other artists doing around you? What kind of artwork was being?
Well, I was part of a sort of group who I had begun to meet in London. Basically, I went to New York because I was painting out of the New York School of Painting. So Pollock and Noland and Lewis and such like, really. Noland was very important to me. I had seen a target of his in London. I don't know if you know those, but they're very, very simple. With just this particular painting had cadmium red, dark, central round figure, and then around it a sort of a halo drawn, probably with a compass of mid-yellow. That I saw this painting as an art student, and it just went straight through to the main vein with me. I thought, gosh, that is how I would like to be, how I can see that that's a possibility in painting. It's unrestricted, it's not highly composed, it's not sort of too demanding of the audience. It just connected, as one very rarely sometimes connects with the unconscious. It just was there. And so that is really, it echoed what I wanted from painting, I suppose. Yeah.
Can you tell us about I was just going to ask about the shapes in this painting. I know that you were talking to me.
I spent 11 years never going out of Manhattan, and I for various reasons, but too busy, I guess. But once in the winter, I went out to a beach with some friends, and I found a piece of sort of old tire or something, and this whole series of painting that was called Blue Line came from this piece of tire that had obviously been painted this sort of turquoise color on the inside, and it had been in the sea forever. So part of it was rubbed away. Don't ask me why, but I took it back to New York, and it just lay around for forever. It was interesting in some profound way. I couldn't say more than that. So a whole group of these paintings came out of that. Yeah.
Sorry, no, you go. I was going to say, were you doing photography when you were in New York as well? I read somewhere that you were.
To earn money, I worked for Sotheby's as a cataloger of fine art photographs. And I saw millions and millions of photographs that I, eventually catalogued. And yes, I think there was an influence, if that's what you're picking up on.
Yeah. The way that you are looking at the world around you.
Also, I have to say that I was absolutely not conscious of it at the time. But my father, I can't remember the date of this painting, but my father died in 1980, and a lot of black paintings ensued. So I can't help thinking there was, again, an unconscious connection with his death.
Yeah.
So could we go on? There's another 2 from New York, and I'll. Okay, this is it. What?
No, sorry. I was just going to say the scale of these is very important, isn't it? I
think it is, yes. This is about 14 feet long. and I liked the movement along this very long stretch of canvas. They're made in one go. A couple of campaigns you can sort of see. I mean, it wasn't a straight sort of flow along from one end to the other. So there was a campaign in the middle probably, and 3 sections. I can't remember. I think I was putting it on with sort of a metal, a big metal sort of flat instrument that was about the width of that top, the bands. Yeah.
And when you say, just going back to campaigns, when you talk about campaigns, is that kind of sections of pieces of the painting that you've worked on?
It's a stop and then a restart and a stop and a restart, maybe in the same day, most usually in the same day. Yeah. I don't like to lose, especially with this sort of painting, my feel of it under my hands, you know. So, yeah. But I mean, over 14 feet, of course, one has to shift the body. So
do you enjoy the physical aspect of painting? Is it a physical thing for you?
You've asked me about enjoyment before, Kasia. When I'm involved in work, I don't enjoy. It's not a word I'd sort of use. It's I don't know what to replace it with. Compulsion. I mean, I am passionate about painting, and always have been. I hope always will be. But I don't know about enjoyment. It's a hard life, and the sort of concentration to make paintings that you don't know what's going to happen as you paint is sort of fierce, and it obviously is a sort of tension that I required at the time, or found, compatible to something or another in me. But I don't know that. I've always found it very difficult to get to work that moment. I have to. New York was difficult for that reason, that I had to do a lot of money earning work to be there at all. And so now I'm in a much better, happier position, because I can work each day and there's a connection between the days,
Yeah.
I don't lose the connection. Yeah.
Your energy is more, undivided attention to your painting. I guess you have more continuous energy for that process.
It's better. And, there's a sort of library of technical stuff that you have to keep in mind. They look simple, but technically it's sort of, there are difficult moments. So you have to sort of have this library in your head of what might happen, or, what. Oh, it sounds too organized, really. But anyway, yeah. So this is called Delft. I was really mad about Vermeer's view of Delft, which I had never seen until much later. Such a great painting. But I guess there is something of the landscape in this work. Yeah.
Is there a chalk line underneath, or an oil bar or something like that runs across the center?
Especially in the next one. If you go to the next slide, thank you. I don't know if you can see it. There's a yellow paint. Actually, there was a certain tool that you could press and the paint would come out. So there's a yellow line on which this sort of great mousy color sort of lay. It followed the line, really. That's the beginning and ending of the story of this painting. It was this gray mess hanging on this yellow line.
I just wanted to ask you about drawing and colour, and I think I've read that you see a successful painting as a balance between colour and drawing, a perfect balance. Could you talk a little bit more about that idea?
I remember maybe yesterday that I once went to visit a painter called Friedel Zubas, an Austrian who had always lived in Boston, I think. Anyway, I really liked his painting and went to visit him. Very intelligent man and intelligent paintings, but felt. And he looked at, he said, bring some photographs, So I took transparencies, and they're pretty good photographs. And he looked at them, and he said, you know, Gina, all us painters have been trying all the time through the years to have a sort of equal disposition of color and drawing and composition. And he said, I just find that in these, and you'll see two of them, I think, in the next bit, that there isn't quite the fullness of that third thing in the paintings. And I thought about what he'd said, and he was right. I thought he was right. Yeah. So can we go to the next slide? Okay. This was back in London, first show back in London. And I was looking to integrate color and drawing a bit more, but not succeeding, actually. And in the drawing was always carrying the painting in some way. Could we go to the next slide?
So the drawing was done first and you painted on top, or are they changeable?
I think it was etched out in that last painting. The drawing was etched out of a sort of thick layering of paint.
Mm-hmm.
With this one, it is delivered on top. The sort of, you can't really see it here, but the orange is put on with this sort of metal spatula that I talked about. And the top drawing it was a wonderful pink. I didn't quite get it right with the orange, I didn't think, but what I wanted was sort of ballet shoe pink. And no, not quite. I like the drawing in the painting. Again, I think Mr. Zubas would have something to say about the importance of the drawing over the ground. So we could go on to the next one, please. Do we have a next slide?
So the next ones, I think these pieces were done after you had been traveling in India, and I think this kind of set the tone for your future interests and work. It kind of
Right. This black line I thought we'd got rid of, but no, it doesn't matter. Yes, Charles and I, my husband, partner Charles, the sculptor Charles Hewlings, went to India in '88. We took time out and we had 6 weeks traveling around between Bombay, Calcutta and the tip and back up to Bombay, looking at temple sculpture, temple architecture, and it was a fantastic and exhausting and life-changing, really, in some way, trip. I had not been to the Third World before, and you know, it's what had I been thinking of? Not to have been aware of who I don't know who I was in relation to most of the rest of the world, really. I suppose that I'd lived in Italy for quite a long time in my youth, and then I'd gone to New York. So I'd sort of, Western art was what I knew, and sort of, I had certain scholarship to do with that. But Indian art was, and especially the painting was not easy to find, because of course the court painting was all done on paper, and it's better seen in Europe than in India, because India's climate is not good for paper, and not much of it remains. But the sculpture, there were places like Ajanta that had wonderful cave paintings indoors, but the sculpture was the thing that we went to see, and it was liberating in some way. I wish I could say more. I'm not going to at this point, but it did change. I think I was just less critical of myself, I think, more allowing of the composition being perhaps, these were taken, the drawing was taken, and the flow, as Kasia is interested in flow, came from a group of paintings called Caligat Paintings that Kapil Jariwala, who I had showed with in London, had introduced me to. And man, do they have flow. I mean, they're just fantastic. They were street paintings made in Calcutta about local events, basically, full color, done incredibly quickly, smallish, but just such a flow and ease. And they were depicting current events, you know, a man murdering his wife, or somebody doing something terrible to something else. I mean, Kali is a really dark goddess. So I guess it allowed for the macabre and the brutal and the what to come into these paintings. So there were certain pictures of courtesans and women in beautiful jewelry. And so some of this drawing comes directly from looking at that jewelry and sort of the great necklaces and earrings and everything that were in those paintings. So can we have the next one?
You spoke about you're inspired by the efficiency in which those drawings kind of captured an instance or a moment.
Yes. Yes, indeed. The V&A has a great collection of them, and there's a nice little book, and not much else, but anyway, if anybody's interested, the book is still available, I think. And certainly they come up in sort of funny auctions, you know, in sort of provincial auctions sometimes. Again, you know, they were not rated as sort of valuable things. They were, but they are. I mean, they're fantastic. Yeah. So here's another of these Caligat paintings called Begin and End. And I think this was the last of them, actually. I had sort of run out of the this body of work, I think. But I quite like this painting. It's you know, it's 6 feet across by 4 or something like that. Yeah.
I love these works, and I really enjoy the contrast of the kind of hard expressive line and the softness of the the painting, although it's very, the way it's put on is very expressive as well, but they're very complementary.
Oh, I'm glad to hear you say that. Glad to hear you say that. Shall we move to the next one? Okay, now we're in the cut. This is the gallery at the Cut Museum. Can we call it a museum? It isn't, because it's a theatre as well as a gallery, isn't it?
It is, yes, yes.
Many things go on there. It's a strange space with this central, it's a Maltings, and it has this central steel support going through. And in the beginning, I thought, no way, there's just no way I can, because I was painting of the size that you just saw. And, you know, the thought of peering through this central structure at a large painting. So it encouraged me to make smaller paintings for the Cut. And it really organically came at a time when I was questioning what I had been doing and the ease with which I had been applying the paint, the habits of my hand, you know, the way that I drew, all of these things were up for question. So these paintings were sort of result of that questioning, and they used a broom, 2 shots at the broom over the surface of the painting. So before the paintings were made, a lot of research went on into exactly how technically the painting was going to stay on the painting, but also be removed. So I'm not saying that very clearly, but it's a difficult technical thing to have something in one sweep, both remain on the painting, but have some of it also removed by the interstices of the broom, the actual bristles of the broom.
Would this be a good point, Gina, to just describe to our audience this evening your broom setup?
Well, I always paint on the floor, always have. The broom, there's a perfect description of the broom and this way of painting in Brendan Prendeville's essay, which is on my website. It's called The Essence of Painting. And it describes this process much better than I could. But basically, the brooms are the heads of household brooms of a certain sort, held together with a steel bar, 2 handles. For these smaller paintings, there were 3 brooms set in a line. For the larger paintings that were my entire reach, there were 5 brooms set in a line. Charles kindly put the structure together, and it worked very well. The setup is that there are like 8. The surface of the painting has to be like a skating rink. So there are, you know, endless layers of sanding and putting more white on and sanding. So then comes the moment. I have already decided the actual proportions of the painting, which again are sort of geometric, I think 2/3 to 1/3, something like that. And the next thing is a drawn line, a pencil line, making a curve, which goes from sort of top right, curving mostly in the middle and coming down to the center at the bottom. And that guides my brooms. That's the only sort of composing that there is, but that curve on the rectangle creates an enormous amount of space. and I do, it's a very happy thing to have space in the painting. So there is a return straight stroke, and that's how these were all made, basically. The lighting at the cut, I mean, Tony Casement has done great wonders with this space since this was 2008, I think. And, it's a beautiful space and people have used it very well, but it's a difficult space because the ceiling's very low and the light is at either end. And so Tony has now put in fantastic lighting, and there we go. I mean, it was a very nice experience, and came at a time when I was nervous about showing these paintings and didn't particularly want to show them in London. So I applied to the cut, and I knew who was a couple of people who were on the board, and I thought they might be sympathetic. So that was how this happened. Yes. Can we go on? So this is sort of the beginning of thinking of how paintings are shown and how they are seen and experienced by an audience, not necessarily a knowing audience. This is a photo of an RA summer show hang, and the painting that I made is, you'll probably see it, it's one of those smaller broom paintings. They're 27 inches by 18, and it's in with a raging bunch, but I think that it reads. Can you see it?
That it definitely stands out amongst the crowd, actually. It reads incredibly well.
I thought it did, but I'm biased. So anyway, I wanted to show you this, to show you that simple, if you can do simple, I think do it, and so I do. I'm not sure I can do it, but I like simple paintings. Next slide. Now, okay, that same painting is now in another show, and it's a very nice space. It's APT in Deptford, and there are two beautifully lit walls, daylight walls, and I was kindly given one of them in a group show. So here are these 4 paintings. Now, some of them, I mean, they're not made at all together, but I decided to hang them together and wanted to see what happened, really. I was very pleased with the hang. The painting that was in the RA Summer Show is the 3rd from the left. And it was painted in sort of the same time as the one on the far left, and the one on the second one was painted many years before that, and the one on the right was painted much later.
Wow.
And a painter called Rob Welsh, at the opening of this show, stood in front of that. I was giving a talk again, and Rob said, "But Gina, is this one painting, or is this a single paintings put together?" Well, thanks, Rob. I was absolutely, there's no answer to that, except that I really liked this hang, and I thought that the individual color spoke, despite the fact that it was different in all of the 4 paintings, and very different, really, the experience of each.
I just find it incredible that they were done at such different times when they could be, as you say, one piece, really.
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was a great, it was if you show the next slide, actually, I think there's a more distant, no, okay. this is another exhibition, but it was a specific shape that just fit the four very nicely in APT. And again, wonderful light. This was a show in Rome after I had this amazing Abbey fellowship for 3 months at the British School at Rome. You get a studio and you get 3 wonderful meals a day and very good company at the table. It was a terrific experience. And this was a show at the end of this fellowship. Again, I had thought there would be dozens of wonderful brooms initially. I was wrong. So very kindly, I had to ask Charles to bring brooms over with him when he came to visit. And I'm showing this, I think, really, because the middle painting, I think, is the next slide. It was bought and is now hanging in a tutorial room in Christchurch in Oxford. And it's, oh no, okay, there we go. And it's terrific because there's the painting. There are windows on either side. The tutor, the professor's desk is in the middle, and the tutees sit on 2 sofas where I'm sitting. I mean, where we're all sitting looking at this painting. And so they're having their tutorial and they're looking at this painting, I think, sometimes. And that's a very nice way of looking at paintings. For me too, I mean, I think to stare at paintings for a very long time is fruitful, but I also think that to look at them, to have them in the room with you, and be thinking about something else often is not a bad way to have the painting come into you somehow. So I got interested in how paintings are seen and places to hang them where, these paintings don't look good in a domestic setting, which Liz Day has a painting that looks very good in her domestic setting. I've never hung them at home. They just don't feel right in my flat in London. So
you were talking the other day and you were saying that you don't actually like having your paintings up at home. Are you still working if you have them around you? Is that what?
Yeah, it seems so. Yeah. Can't stop, really. Yeah.
I just wanted to go back to the previous, and I just wanted to talk a little bit about your kind of the layers. I know that you spoke a little bit before, and I think I read in your interview that you've done previously with someone else about you looking through the top layer of your paintings and kind of looking through the top layer. What's most important is kind of what's going on beneath and through that.
Well, I think they have equal importance, ideally, but I think a lot of people get stuck at the front with these paintings, not people who paint or who are used to looking at painting, perhaps, but I think a lot of people find the striations that come from the broom a sort of barrier. And, well, I don't know, it's very difficult. I talked about earlier about I've always felt that abstraction was the most real thing, but unfortunately, other people don't feel that way, and they have great difficulty when there isn't a so-called subject in entering the painting. So I don't know if that's part of this same syndrome. I would not have difficulty myself with these in entering into the various layerings of the paint.
I just wanted to talk to you about layering and entering into. You said that you go into your husband's studio and look at his sculptures a lot.
I do. I go and get a hit in the. We share a building and as a studio, and I'm very. It's a start to the day to go into Charles's studio, because the feelings of space, I don't want to put too many words to it, but it's inspiring, you know, and sort of clean to me, because it's not painting, and so different. And he sees the world in such a different way. I mean, it's fascinating. Yeah.
Lovely to have that inspiration and contrast of
so lucky. We're also, you know, it's difficult living two artists together. There are good points too.
Yeah. Thank you, Gina.
So shall we go to the next? Okay, this is a recent show, and these are broom paintings. I must say, people talk about my broom paintings, but it's not an original thing. There's a wonderful painter in New York called Sandy Sloan, who made broom paintings in the 70s, I think, or early 80s. And they were very nice. I enjoyed them a lot. They're not like these, but she certainly handled the broom extremely well, and serious painter. So I'm not the first by any means. So this is a broom painting, and it's my full reach. So this is 5 heads of a broom. I get with 3 handles this time. The colors are, as I said, the research is done separately, and to start with, long before the paintings are made. The colors are taken from other people's work, usually. In this case, they are taken from, there's a site less known than Pompeii, of Roman excavation after the great Vesuvius lava spread. And this is one room that remains, and it's called Room 66. And it has this phenomenally sort of, I don't know what to call it, but these colors are the colors of that room. They're high, red, yellow, turquoise, dark brown, and it's a very sort of decorative, architectural design, stupendous on the 4 walls. It's open to the elements, so heaven knows how long it will last. But I just it was a great inspiration. And so this show was based on these colors, basically. This is a group show, Sharon Hall and David Rhodes, and many, 5 of us. There were all people who I admired, and it was a terrific show in a nice space, don't mean Bloomsbury, I mean Bermondsey. Yes.
Lovely, thank you.
Okay.
Just wanted to highlight how much research goes into your work, and the actual execution of your painting is incredibly quick, isn't it? It's a very small percentage of the time, the actual painting, in comparison to everything that goes on to create it.
That's right. Yeah. And
is it the research part that really interests you? that ignites you? Do you have a preferable part of the process?
No, I think it was a necessity. It came about again organically, but I do have an eye condition, and so I couldn't, I don't know, scanning and gazing and were not what they used to be. So it was less stressful for me to divide the research from the actual process, to have certain things sort of that I knew how they were going to behave, what I wanted from them. Not composing, but of course the broom and the curve that is in these paintings remained. So yeah, I think of them as very integrated, the research and the process, frankly.
Yeah.
They're not separate,
Yeah.
I hope.
Yeah. Thank you so much. Shall we move to the last slide for this evening?
Now, okay, just before you do, that's the painting that you just saw. And look how different it looks, flat on. So I was very glad of the previous slide where you see, you know, we often enter into a room with big paintings especially, and you sort of get, you know, glimpses of them as you're coming up to them and placing yourself in front of them. And I like all of those views. The color comes to you slowly, and then there's, you know, other readings.
Yeah. Yeah.
So the positioning of paintings for me is extremely important. The hang, the light, the architecture. I'm very, very influenced in choosing where the paintings are going to be hung by those factors. Good light, an interesting architectural place, and I suppose ease of looking. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, Gina. Thank you so much. I think we've kind of come to the end of our interview. It's been absolutely amazing talking to you. Really wonderful. Thank you for letting us into your world. Very exciting. We have got about 10 minutes left. If anyone would like to ask any questions, please put your questions in the chat and I will ask Gina. I'm going to start off with a question from Fabian Peak. So to link these interviews together, I'm asking the previous artist to ask the next artist a question. And Fabian's question for Gina is, are you interested in the wealth of symbolism in your use of a broom in creating some of your big paintings? Or is it that it presents the best method of covering a large area of canvas? Thus, the raw action is the most important thing.
Definitely the latter.
Do you want me to elaborate on that at all, Gina?
Well, I did do it earlier.
Because I'm
Yes,
very conscious that you've covered a lot of this ground already, haven't you? And
yeah.
But I was just going to think of a slightly different slant on it as well, you know, which was to think of the different ways that abstract painters literally apply their paint, you know, and how.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
like if you think of your painting and then you think of Mondrian, say, you know, who would have, I suppose, used a sort of quite a small brush and painstakingly, you know, created these things. And you're talking about you work on the floor, and what was your you said you sort of made in one go, you said, and I think that's fantastic, you know. And when I came to your studio a few years ago, a brilliant visit, that's what I was very intrigued by. I know. So I'm sure you're going over old ground now, but maybe I'm just interested in, say, if you've got 5 brooms altogether,
Yeah.
How do you get the paint onto those brooms before doing the movement?
Okay.
Yeah.
It's on the floor, and the limits of the canvas have been very worked out. So this layering and sanding has built up this sort of arena with very strict edges. And to those edges, I put a sort of pinafore of plastic, and onto the top end, I pour striations of paint.
Oh, yeah.
And then take the broom and just sweep it over the surface.
Oh, so they're not the paint's not put on the broom first. It's put on the. No, I see. I understand. Yeah.
It's a great waste of paint. That's one regret about it. But I've no doubt that I shall have to rethink that. Yes, in the light of current circumstances. Yeah. But when I knew that you kindly actually said you were going to ask a question, and I talked to Charles about it, and I said, now Fabian wants the symbol of the broom. You know, the broom seems to absolutely fascinate people. I mean, people would bring me brooms in Italy. There was something about the broom that sort of really took hold of an imagination. But there is no symbol in it for me at all. It's absolutely a tool. Choose the sort of broom very carefully, because I like the interstices to have quite a big gap. You know, so I go around hardware stores and look for decent brooms.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Fabian. I really enjoyed your talk a lot. Thank you.
Thanks, Gina, and yours especially. Really interested in those early paintings because I didn't know those really. Your early work, which I thought was wonderful. You know, yeah.
I'm glad to have seen them again myself. Actually, yes. Thank you.
Good luck.
I've got another question, Gina, from Jo. She says, is the white in the last painting an absence of paint or paint from the broom? It's wonderful either way.
It's an absence. It's an absence. I mixed the paint a little thicker in the knowledge that it would not cover the entire. I didn't know where it was going to leave the white parts, and it's different in all of the paintings that where the white is, but it is there, and because the paint is slightly thicker and therefore, you know, doesn't spread as evenly, right? Yeah.
Thank you. I have a question for you. In your mind, what is the main difference between the act of drawing and the act of painting?
I suppose for me, anyway, drawing sets limits. I mean, and it is a beginning, you know, for me. It sets the scene, yeah.
Thank you. Well, I have a question from Jo. This is for our audience. So it says, we'd love to know where you've all joined us from. We know this is a global audience. So if you would like to write where you are in the world in the chat, it would be lovely to see where you're joining us from. So does anyone else have any questions for Gina? No, I think we're good. So I would like to say a huge thank you. I've enjoyed this so much. Thank you so much, Gina. Really wonderful to join us.
Thank you.
And thank you to our wonderful audience. Thank you for joining us. I will just tell you about our next interview is with Johan Don Daniel, and it will be an in-person interview, our first one in person for this series, at the Cut. On Thursday, the 26th of August at 6 p.m. You can book your tickets online as usual via our website, as you did here. Following Johan's interview in August, we will be interviewing Gina's husband, the sculptor Charles Hewlings, in September, and I will be confirming a date shortly and sending that out. So thank you very much for joining us this evening. Thank you, Gina. Thank you, Joe, for your tech support. And yes, have a good evening. Enjoy.